Receptacles used for pool lighting are not required to be installed in conduit. Conduit is required only if it is used as a method of equipment grounding. The receptacle is required to be installed on a ground fault circuit interrupter, or GFCI, protected circuit. Let's delve into the details. Firstly, it's crucial to understand that the National Electrical Code, or NEC, provides specific guidelines for electrical installations around swimming pools to ensure safety and prevent electrical hazards. These guidelines address various aspects, including wiring methods, grounding, bonding, and the use of ground fault circuit interrupters. When it comes to receptacles used for pool lighting, the general rule is that they do not necessarily need to be installed in conduit. Conduit, which is a protective tubing system, is typically used to encase electrical wires, providing mechanical protection and preventing damage from moisture, corrosion, or physical impact. However, the NEC allows for other wiring methods to be used for pool lighting receptacles, provided that they meet the code's requirements for safety and durability. Secondly, the key exception to this rule is when conduit is used as a method of equipment grounding. Equipment grounding refers to the practice of connecting non-current carrying metal parts of electrical equipment to ground, providing a path for fault current to flow back to the source. This helps to quickly trip a circuit breaker or fuse in the event of a ground fault, preventing electrical shock hazards. If conduit is used as the equipment grounding conductor, it must be installed according to the NEC requirements for grounding and bonding. This typically involves using metal conduit that is properly connected to ground, ensuring a low impedance path for fault current. Thirdly, regardless of whether conduit is used or not, the NEC mandates that any receptacle used for pool lighting must be installed on a GFCI protected circuit. A GFCI is a device that monitors the current flowing in a circuit and quickly interrupts the power supply if it detects a ground fault. Ground faults can occur when electricity leaks from a circuit to ground, often through a person's body, posing a serious risk of electrical shock. GFCI protection is essential for pool lighting circuits because it can detect even small ground faults and quickly shut off the power, preventing injury or death. GFCI protection can be provided by a GFCI circuit breaker in the electrical panel or by a GFCI receptacle installed at the point of use. In either case, the GFCI must be properly installed and tested to ensure that it is functioning correctly. In summary, while conduit is not always required for pool lighting receptacles, it is important to follow the NEC guidelines for wiring methods, grounding, and GFCI protection to ensure the safety of swimmers and others around the pool. If conduit is used as the equipment grounding conductor, it must be properly installed and connected to ground. Additionally, all pool lighting receptacles must be GFCI protected to prevent electrical shock hazards. Now let's elaborate on the relevant sections of the National Electrical Code, or NEC, that pertain to electrical installations around swimming pools. The primary section governing swimming pools is Article 680 of the NEC. This article provides comprehensive requirements for the installation of electrical wiring and equipment in and around swimming pools, spas, hot tubs, and other similar bodies of water. Within Article 680, there are several specific sections that address various aspects of pool electrical safety. For example, Section 680.26 covers bonding requirements for swimming pools. Bonding refers to the practice of connecting all metal parts of a pool and its surrounding structures to a common grounding system. This helps to equalize the electrical potential between these metal parts, reducing the risk of electrical shock. Section 680.26 specifies the types of metal parts that must be bonded, the methods for bonding them, and the minimum size of the bonding conductors. Another important section is 680.22, which covers the location and installation of electrical equipment around swimming pools. This section specifies the minimum distances that electrical equipment, such as receptacles, switches, and lighting fixtures, must be located from the pool's edge. These distances are designed to prevent accidental contact with energized electrical equipment while in or around the pool. Section 680.23 addresses the requirements for underwater lighting fixtures. This section specifies the types of lighting fixtures that are permitted for use underwater, the maximum voltage allowed, and the requirements for grounding and bonding these fixtures. Underwater lighting fixtures must be specifically designed and listed for use in swimming pools and must be installed according to the manufacturer's instructions. Furthermore, Section 680.33, which was mentioned, specifically addresses storable swimming pools. Storable pools are defined as those that are constructed so that they may be readily disassembled for storage and reassembled to their original dimensions. While the original question mentioned that the lights in question are for permanent pools, understanding the requirements for storable pools can still provide valuable context. Section 680.33 outlines the requirements for electrical installations associated with storable pools, including the use of GFCI protection, the location of receptacles, and the grounding and bonding of metal parts. Now, regarding the specific question of whether the receptacle required for the pool light needs conduit all the way back to the electrical panel, the answer is generally no, unless the conduit is being used as the equipment grounding conductor. As mentioned earlier, the NEC allows for other wiring methods to be used for pool lighting receptacles, provided that they meet the code's requirements for safety and durability. These wiring methods may include non-metallic sheath cable, or NM cable, or other approved wiring methods. However, it is crucial to ensure that the wiring method used is suitable for the environment in which it is installed. For example, if the wiring is exposed to moisture, chemicals, or physical damage, it may be necessary to use a more robust wiring method, such as conduit. If conduit is used, it must be properly installed and connected to ground to serve as the equipment grounding conductor. If a different wiring method is used, a separate equipment grounding conductor must be installed alongside the circuit conductors and connected to ground at the electrical panel. In addition to the wiring method, it is also important to consider the location of the receptacle. As mentioned earlier, Section 680.22 of the NEC specifies the minimum distances that receptacles must be located from the pool's edge. If the receptacle is located within these minimum distances, it may be subject to additional requirements, such as the use of a weatherproof enclosure or GFCI protection. However, the statement that as long as the receptacle for it is more than 10 feet from the pool, conduit is not required is not entirely accurate. The distance requirements vary depending on the type of receptacle and the location of the pool. It is essential to consult the NEC for the specific distance requirements that apply in a given situation. Finally, it is important to emphasize the importance of following all applicable electrical codes and regulations when installing electrical equipment around swimming pools. Electrical work should only be performed by qualified and licensed electricians who are familiar with the NEC and local electrical codes. Improperly installed electrical equipment can pose a serious risk of electrical shock or fire, so it is essential to ensure that all work is performed correctly and safely. In conclusion, while conduit is not always required for pool lighting receptacles, it is important to follow the NEC guidelines for wiring methods, grounding, and GFCI protection to ensure the safety of swimmers and others around the pool. The electrical work should only be performed by qualified and licensed electricians who are familiar with the NEC and local electrical codes. Remember to always consult the latest edition of the NEC and local electrical codes for the most up-to-date requirements. Always prioritize safety and ensure that all electrical work is performed in a professional and code-compliant manner. The information provided here is for general guidance only and should not be considered a substitute for professional electrical advice. When in doubt, consult with a qualified electrician to ensure that your pool electrical system is safe and compliant with all applicable regulations.